Welcome.
Hello.
How is
That
everyone
was fun.
doing in the building?
In the building.
Hi. In the building,
In the
the
building. The
TOTIWABA
metaphorical building of the YouTube space.
TOTIWABA stations here. We have newscaster Kari and Bree with you today. This midday on my side of the world.
It is. It's late in the evening for me here in the UK of the world.
Well, as you guys know, we're obviously missing Jamie, but she did leave us
She ascended.
a little something. A little something.
I hope you guys are having a good stream. I don't feel good.
Corey, take care of her. Don't let her lie.
He says he's taking care of me, so.
I got her coffee. She just drank it in 2 seconds.
So yes,
just drank in 2 seconds.
Poor babe is sick. She texted me at like 2:00 in the morning that she was throwing up. So please send your prayers for her.
We may have to do a blood ritual.
Yeah,
if she doesn't get
make
better.
our babe better, please. It's no fun, obviously, being sick, but when it's one of us, it's like
right. Yeah, it's pretty awful. Also, pray to HBO that they renew Westworld.
I still have to watch the end, so let's not even go there.
Putting it out there. Okay.
So we're gonna cover.
What's that shirt you're wearing, Brie?
Oh yeah, good. Thanks for reminding me.
This is Kari's
face. It says "I hate it here." This is Kari's.
I was upside down, and I hate it here.
Yes, everyone can go grab their merch on our website. That one time I was abducted by aliens.com. We have quite a lot of merch on there. So today we're going to cover quite a range of topics. We're going to start with one that is a bit more topical because it's created quite a frenzy in the Twitter world. I know that much for sure. Kari,
not just the Twitter world. It's created a bit of a frenzy everywhere. Everybody's got a personal perception of the event. It's kind of been, anytime there's a big ruckus in ufology, there's a bit of oversaturation. So I'm a bit wary about covering it just for the fact that everyone else has already covered it. But I feel like what I've put together is a pretty comprehensive look at the story, the evidence, the response, and other things of that nature. So I'm going to share my screen.
I really want you to tell the audience what you told me today, which was that you're not necessarily here to give your opinions as to what it is. I mean, I know we will because we always do. We'll talk about it and, throw our ideas out there.
Right.
But you said something really important was that you just wanted to look at the data objectively and let the data speak for itself.
Right. It's not about how I feel about it. It's not about how you feel about it. It's about how once you look at all of the data, you can make your own kind of decision on what it is, honestly, without having it fed to you through a personal lens. So I've hopefully managed to get quite a fair and balanced thing with a lot of data. I saw quite a lot of photos, but here we go. I'm going to share it now. Share tab audio. Cool. So I'm going to read through it for people that don't know the story. On August 4th, 1990, 2 young men working as chefs in a hotel in Pitlochry, a beautiful Highland Perthshire town, just outside the Cairngorms National Park in Scotland. At 9 p.m, after a long, hot day in the kitchen, they drove about 13 miles north to the A9 to Calveen, a spot on the edge of the mountain range for a walk in the hills. They hadn't gone far when they saw a huge, solid, diamond-shaped object about 100 feet long, hovering silently in the sky above them. Terrified, they hid in some bushes and looked up. Minutes later, they heard the scream of a jet aircraft going north. In 1990, RAF Lucas in Fife had 2 squadrons of Tornado fighters on 24-hour standby to intercept Russian intruder craft. The jet came back and circled the thing before heading off on its original course, as if the pilot had seen the object too and had come back for a closer look. Eventually, the 2 men stuck their camera out from where they were hiding and fired off 6 frames. At that point, the object shot vertically upwards and disappeared way, way up into the sky. Convinced they'd just seen a UFO, they took their photos to the Daily Record, one of Scotland's leading newspapers, but no story was ever printed. The paper passed the pictures on to the Ministry of Defence, and then the photographs simply vanished, along with the 2 young chefs.
So wait, they took a walk at 9 p.m.?
So yeah, I guess like it was the middle of summer, so it would have been quite light out there still. So I mean, maybe they went there to go smoke some marijuana or see the view. I don't know. Marijuana. I mean, back then it was pretty like hush hush. So
that's interesting. Okay,
it is very interesting.
I like that
they happened to be there. They happened to be there at the time, and that once the story kind of made its way into like ufological myth, they just disappeared. So this is Craig Lindsay, who was the intelligence officer who dealt with the witnesses and took the photographs from the paper. And this is what he said. Wherever I searched for answers, however, I found insiders blocking my inquiries until I struck lucky and found retired RAF officer Craig Lindsay, the first official to speak to one of the young chefs after that night. He was willing to talk to me, and most exciting of all, I discovered he'd broken protocol that day and stashed a copy of the image before on Whitehall's orders, sending the entire dossier, negatives included, to the Ministry of Defence in London. He'd kept the secret copy in his desk for 32 years, hidden inside the book Great Aircraft of the World, which I think is really, really ironic. When I tracked him down, now 83, still living in Scotland, he sounded almost relieved. I've been waiting for someone to come to contact me about this for more than 30 years, he said.
Well, wild. He hid that in a drawer?
Well, I guess like he forgot it was there. Like, so here's a bit more about Mr. Lindsay. He's a pragmatic, logical former civil servant who spent 10 years in the army, is convinced that the images and the frightened man he spoke to on that day are genuine. Initially, he was worried about speaking in case he was in breach of the Official Secrets Act, but after 32 years of keeping quiet, he wants the truth to emerge. That does raise some questions, which we'll get to later. As a press officer for Scotland, I dealt with many UFO reports, but most were just of lights in the sky. It was obvious that this one was different. When I asked what sort of noise it had made, the man said it didn't make any noise at all. Up to that point, I wasn't treating it seriously, but when he said it was silent, I suddenly realized there is no aircraft I know of that is silent. Lindsay arranged for the negatives the men had handed to the Daily Record to be collected and faxed a copy of the best print to the Ministry of Defence's now defunct UFO desk in London, which was in the Secretariat. Before I could even get back to my desk, the phone was ringing and my contact said, "Tell me more about this. Can you get the negatives?" When he visited the MOD later that year, however, he saw the Calvine photo blown up to poster size on the UFO office wall. I asked how they were getting on. They said it was being investigated. I was told to leave it to London. They asked me not to get involved, so I've done exactly that, he said. The years passed and gradually I just forgot about the print in my drawer. Now I hope the 2 witnesses will come forward and tell their own stories. So that's his kind of opinion on the situation and his perception of how it played out for him, which is quite interesting.
Question though, wasn't it the person that went who tracked down Lindsay for the photographs? Wasn't that Disclosure Team?
Yeah, that was David Clark and Daniel something. I'm very sorry, I forgot your last name. If you're watching, Daniel something.
I mean,
begins with a Z.
Incredible research.
Yeah, it's the fact that they were able to track this image down, and it just happened. This guy just had it in a book. Is very interesting. Like,
wow. Yeah. Well, that to me though just shows how there's just a lot of talented people, I think, in this community when they put their minds to something and they really make great headlines. I mean, the fact that we're doing this, looking over this in general, just off of them, I think is awesome. So
right.
Congratulations
Shout out to them. They've done great work. So I've got a few things to show regarding like where this image has ended up. It's ended up at Sheffield Hallam University here in the UK, and one of the kind of lead professors in the photography department prepared a report on the image, which we can go over shortly. I have to do it separately, though, because it, for some reason, wouldn't upload into the PowerPoint. So, technology. So, here's about 5 minutes of videos that we're going to watch. Fair use, everybody. Anybody watching this is fair use. We're going to be watching this and rendering some commentary on it. And
educational purposes only.
Educational purposes.
Here we are at Calvine in
Can
the
you hear
Scottish
that?
Highlands.
Yes,
where we're
you can do a
standing
little
at the
louder.
moment is about 10, 11 miles northwest of the town of Pitlochry. And this is the place where one of the most famous UFO photographs in UK history was taken. And so the scene you can see behind me, you may have seen a simulated version of what this photograph looked like, showing the Scottish mountains in the background. This has been produced, this is like an artist's impression. So that's what a lot of people will have seen online, but the actual photograph was taken in a different position, which we can actually see from here. Now that is a first generation photocopy taken from an original print, where you can see a wire fence running in the background, even with some what looks like wool from the local sheep caught on the fence, and we can see some Scots pine hanging from the top of the image. You can very clearly see the object, the diamond-shaped object that was described, and what appears to be one RAF aircraft immediately below it. And so the scene that you can see on the actual image, the Calvine photograph, we believe is up there on the hill, Struan Point. So this story should have originally been in the Daily Record. The photograph was taken one evening in August 1990. Two guys who were working in a hotel at Pitlochry called the Athol Palace Hotel. They'd gone out after work to do a walk in this area. They'd parked at Calvine. They'd gone through a wood and over a fence, and when they were over the fence, they suddenly realized that there was a large diamond-shaped silent object hovering in the sky above them. And understandably, they were pretty perturbed at this, really scared. They ran back to the fence where the wood was, and as they were waiting, they heard the noise of a jet coming down the valley. And the jet appeared to go past this object, disappeared into the distance, and then sometime later returned and began circling around it. And at that point, they started taking photographs. I've been looking into this UFO photograph for some time, since some basic images were released by the National Archives in 2008. After a lot of investigative work, I managed to track down Craig Lindsay, who was the RAF press officer at the time, who received these images from the Daily Record in Glasgow. When we met, he brought the actual original colour photograph that he'd kept for 31 years, and I was able to examine that. He's basically spoken for the first time because I contacted him. I was able to track him down. No one had asked him about this until I called him. And he interviewed by phone one of the two witnesses who had actually been out here and actually seen this object in the sky and took the photographs. And they told a very straightforward, convincing story. They were obviously wanted to know what this thing was, whether they'd seen something that was secret. So they sent their photographs and negatives to the picture desk at the Daily Record in Glasgow. And it was the picture editor at this newspaper who phoned the RAF press office at RAF Petrivy Castle. So that's how Craig came into the story. And they said that they'd been sent these photographs and they'd like a comment. But Craig said, well, I'd need to see the photographs first before I could give any comment. So what happened was they sent one of the best images in an envelope by courier to the RAF Petrivy. So that's the point at which Craig then contacted Secretariat Air Staff 2A, which was, everyone knows, was the UFO desk in London. He faxed a copy of this image to them. They didn't seem particularly interested at first, but as soon as they saw the image, they came back and said, yeah, can you get hold of the negatives? Can you speak to the men who saw this thing or claimed that they'd seen this thing? So that's the point at which he phoned them and found out exactly what had happened.
So where are the
we
negatives?
finally, after all these years, are now getting to
That's
the
the
truth
question.
about this photograph. But there are
The MOD
still
claims that they
many
sent them back
unanswered questions.
to
We still
the
don't
paper,
know
but they've
whether
never
this was a
arrived,
genuine
or they,
unidentified object,
nobody
or
knows where they
whether
are.
it was some kind
Nobody
of
knows where the
secret
two
military
witnesses are.
technology that's still on the secret list.
Very
thank you,
interesting.
David Clark.
Thank you, Richard and David.
David. So here's
That is very
a
interesting.
dramatic recreation of the event.
According to the UFO files, in August 1990, 2 hikers were walking in the Scottish Highlands, close
To
to
smoke a
Calpine,
joint.
north of Pitlochry.
To smoke a joint.
Suddenly, they saw
Marijuana.
something
Boy,
incredible.
that's some good marijuana you've got there.
Oh. This is not a bad reenactment.
It was a chance for the picture of a lifetime.
Ooh.
The hikers immediately contacted journalists from the Scottish Daily Record newspaper.
Look what I got.
After viewing their photos,
They've done a really good job at
journalists chose to share
telling it.
both
The only thing
Yeah.
I
and
saw that was
negatives
wrong
with the
was
Ministry of Defence.
the craft went sideways instead of straight up. I think it was supposed to go
The
straight up.
UFO desk files say
Oh,
that
it's
the
like-
images were then analysed by the best team in the business.
Ah.
The Defence Intelligence staff
Oh,
sent
this-
these images.
this-
to
Okay,
This
so
Nick
this is
Pope.
something that we
Joint
should
Air
address.
Reconnaissance and
I don't know if I can
Intelligence
listen to
Centre.
him talk right now.
Now, this is the
But this is something that we should address, right? Because he sort of was talking about this
He was saying he
before
can't give
the
a comment.
time.
He said that he
No.
had this on the wall in his office, which I think I don't know if I believe that, or maybe not his office, because I don't think he was. Yeah.
So like no one likes him anymore. What's the deal with that?
Well,
I
think
know
it's-
what you
it's-
don't.
It is. I think his credentials have been overstated. When he has on his own website that he is the British Fox Mulder, Fox Mulder goes out into the field and investigates stuff and gets into conspiracies and aliens and creatures. Like, I don't think he was doing that, but so it just seems
Right.
like it's just been over
Over-dramatized, maybe?
Yeah, over dramatized, overstated what he did. Like, yes, he may have looked into cases and stuff, but I don't think it was what the media make him out to be. But that's all I got to say about that. So,
What do we have next? I really want to look at these photos.
okay, so we'll just skip
Oh.
over that video because, anyway, Scottish Daily Record. So these are in like MOD files from at the time. Sorry, I'm just reading it. So I guess this isn't in a document talking about basically it's part of the report. So this was like, I'm guessing that when it says defensive lines to take, it means like how should desk officers and stuff handle this subject if they're approached about it, kind of thing.
And it doesn't say anything about the negatives, or like I really want to know that detail, because it seems like that's what people are really going after.
Right.
What are the negatives? It's interesting that like people capture pictures of UFOs all the time, but for some reason this one was special.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know where the negatives went, because if the MOD is going to claim that they sent it back to the paper, that creates a situation where both entities are going, no, I sent it to you. And it just casts a huge question mark over the whole thing of, okay, so were these negatives classified? Did someone go, yoink, you can't send that back? Or did the paper lose them and they're just going, we can add to the story by saying the MOD did it? It's
yeah,
a bit of a mystery.
if there's no like proof that the MOD said that they sent back the negatives, that's suspicious. But if there is actual proof, something written, typed up, whatever, if we have some type of document where they said that they did send it back, then I feel like that just acknowledges the fact that there were negatives. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well,
Um,
they said that they received them and then they looked at them and then sent them back. So it creates this question of, if they were sent back, was it because they weren't what, they
right.
weren't
What was the reason?
what we are being told they are now, or were they sent back but not sent back because someone went no, but it was already after that letter. Unless, well, actually, I think I'm tripping myself up now. So somewhere, I think it's on the next slide.
Ooh,
So here is the So this is the paper report of the incident. It's like UFO incident, Saturday, the 4th of August, 1990, Calwine, Scotland, 9 p.m. The cloud base was 25,000 feet, dropping down to 15,000 feet during showers. Winds out of the southwest at 10 to 15 knots. Temperature 14 degrees. So it's kind of cloudy with occasional showers up in the hills. So that'll be some like orographic lift storms. And the photograph details is they didn't know. they didn't find out like what type of camera and what type of lens and what focal length. So up here on the top is an excerpt from a letter sent by RAF Air Attaché in Washington to an MOD controller, talking allegedly about this photograph being taken over to the United States, so intelligence officials in like the Air Attaché could look at it with CIA and other intelligence services in America to probably match it against other cases where they've seen stuff.
Why does it always have to go back to America?
This one is 3 weeks later in the same area, a similar sighting happened.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Which is very interesting. So you've got one object in a kite or diamond shape in a very bright white color, made no sound at all. In a moving vehicle, slowed down to view object on A92, southbound near Galatown roundabout, Kirkcaldy, Fife, Scotland. Naked eye to the south, slightly up from horizon, probably about 200 feet high. Not able to specify. Appeared suddenly, then after 3 minutes disappeared as if someone had turned off a light.
Oh shit! Boom.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Wait, when was this? This was the what was the date on this?
So it was 24 days later.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's interesting that they even use the word diamond. I think of a diamond like this, opposed to like, I guess
it was around the same time too.
See it
8:30.
That's interesting. So that's like, that's good findings.
There's a lot of interesting things. Like I feel like this craft is not the only sighting of that kind of craft.
Right.
So there's been a lot of hoo-ha on the Twitter sphere. It's a reflection. It's an island. It's something poking through some cloud. Well, it's not a reflection because otherwise it would be mirrored, right? It's not. So no.
I see.
And you can see that there is definition and texture on the outside of it, which is interesting because it is. If it's real, it really is one of the best images that we've ever had in history.
You think so?
Can you name me any other images that look this good? Like if it's real, like I don't think that there are.
Yeah, probably.
There are things to consider though, because I have considered this, that the United States is making quite an effort within its government to get this issue kick-started, and the UK doesn't really have anything like that. So I just find it interesting that that stuff's happening over in America, and then suddenly there's this mythological photo that just kind of comes out of the woodwork that gets everybody in the country talking. It's in the paper, which I'll show you in a minute. I have a physical copy of it. It's interesting, like, why now? That's just a question I have, is why now? And it could be completely innocent, it just is now, but I'm curious because there's so much going on in the subject that suddenly there's a big confirmation coming from a country that's been trying to get the issue kind of kickstarted for a little while. It's yeah, interesting to me.
There are a lot of comments, and one of the things I want to get to, actually, if we could, if we went back, Ron wanted
sure.
to know who wrote those handwritten notes that you had in the last slide.
I believe
it's in the National Archives.
Yeah. It doesn't have a name on it. I'd assume that this was Craig Lindsay.
Well, I guess if it's in the
I'm not sure. It doesn't have the name on it, but this was in the National Archives for the incident. So I would assume it's either the. Well, no, it would be the MOD person that dealt with him. So this would be Craig Lindsay.
That would be Craig Lindsay.
Yeah, the paper wouldn't have done this.
And then I just hear people like, oh, it's a nothing picture. And then Night Gazer said mirrored right through the center. So is that true? How is it mirrored in the center? I mean, it would be identical top and bottom, wouldn't it be?
Well, yeah,
Which
I mean,
it's not.
You'd have like this white mark on both sides. You'd have like, why is there a completely different shape on this side to this side if it was mirrored in the middle?
Or what about like what are those, like a heat signature on that beach?
A heat
I don't
signature?
know. No. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the inverted one.
Ah. Oh, I see.
Yeah, I figured it would look. Yeah, it would look the same.
Right.
So I
it
don't
wouldn't
know.
It wouldn't have a boxy bit on the end. It looks like an arrowhead. Like it looks like an old arrowhead or a spearhead.
It does, especially like the last photo.
Right.
I can see that as for sure. That's wild.
Pretty wild.
Yeah.
Ta-da.
Are there any other questions about that? I think people are just like, mirrored is not the same as reflection, says Mr. Ron.
I mean, I agree.
Horizontally,
but
not
it would be close enough that you'd be able to say that's a reflection, but it's different enough that I don't know.
We could all just be seeing different things.
You can see that there is a different texture on the bottom than there is on the top. Like it's a completely different structure.
I just feel like
there's also these colors would be the same. You wouldn't have where you can see where it's top lit on top and then shadowed on the bottom. If it was a mirror, they wouldn't be like that.
And then what's the deal over here?
Right. So there are questions, right? So Stephen Greenstreet's been talking today in threads, and I thought he had some interesting points. So the point about the negatives. So is the MOD lying? You know, and it brings in questions about the article that it says like there were insiders trying to block people from talking about it, and they've tried to cover it up for 30 years. Why would they do that if they sent the negatives back? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And on top of that, if it was classified top secret, will there be any punishment or reprisals for Mr. Lindsay for sharing it publicly? Because if it's classified and he kept a copy, like he's breached like protocol and storing of classified material, and then he's broken like I guess it would be like the Espionage Act or something equivalent to it here for sharing it if it is classified. So there are questions about why and what?
I mean,
Okay.
if they go after poor Lindsay, he's old. Leave him alone. I don't think that they will.
I'm guessing that this leads to my question of why now. Is it because he's old and they won't, like, the MOD won't bother pursuing it? Is it to trickle a snowball down a hill? I just have questions on the timing, because it's, you know, why wait 32 years?
Yeah.
So next we have some craft which are similar, which I found very interesting. So here's a clip from 1997 of something that's very similar.
And die in prison. I'm sorry. Hides in
What?
long grass. Come on now.
Jeez.
I know.
Yeah, I can't see the chat while I'm doing this, so I have no idea
They're
what's going on in
vicious.
there, guys. But like, try not to kill each other. So here's a clip of a UFO that looks like Calvine 7 years later. It's very interesting.
Yeah, 1997.
Similar shape.
Yeah. Similar shape. Isn't
And
this
then
just like
here's
a
one-
typical flying saucer?
Kind of. It's that kind of topple shape. Now this one, I'm not entirely sure. There's been people that have been claiming that this one is something being dragged by an aircraft, like a banner or something. But I don't know. Watching it back, I don't believe it. Apparently, this was the 3rd of August this year. It's just hovering there, and it looks exactly the same. I am.
I'm
confusion.
sorry. Did you say that this was this year?
Yeah, this was like a couple of weeks ago.
Like, I don't even think they make crafts like that anymore.
Oh, it's one of the old sports models. I get you.
They took a vintage out just around the block. I just want you to know that Mike, Dad, is like, if you guys have anything bad to say about Spooky, now's the time.
Oh, guys,
Spooky
come
is a
on.
goofus.
No, we don't say the word goof around here. Oh no, I'm not a goofus. You're a goofus. You hoofus.
Goofy ass. How?
Goofy ass.
Yeah,
how?
that's interesting. I have to say that when I look at crafts like this, it reminds me a lot of Billy Meyer, and
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah, I mean that's
like
this is what fraud and hoax do to the field. Is it dilutes our ability to look at videos and be like, is that what it is? Because like when you get people hoaxing, like, you know, the famous "I want to believe" poster, that's a Billy Meyer photograph. Like, that is a fake.
I know, it's the most. It's like the most
It's
well-known
funny that
photo.
it's become the symbol of like being into UFOs, but
Ufology.
it's a fake image.
And he's a crazy person, and so is his
He's
American handler.
Woo! Spicy.
He is. He'll probably
So-
come after us.
Oh,
It's all right. He's gone after us before, so that's okay.
Yeah, this is.
Oh
true.
man.
So that concludes my presentation. I have to do this presentation twice tonight, so this one, I guess I learned some stuff about how to present it. But I hope you enjoyed the enduring mystery that is the Calvine UFO.
Bree, is that a hole in your shirt? No, it's Kari's face, and it says "I hate it here." So this is difficult. I think that just another day in ufology. I think that you gave excellent sources. I definitely haven't come across any of that, so I praise you for that.
One thing I didn't show. One thing I didn't show.
Oh yeah, you actually have a copy.
It's in the actual paper. Is it like in the actual paper you can buy? Like the
They don't
Daily
even make
Mail.
newspapers in my
The
area
Daily Mail.
anymore, I swear.
This is the first paper I've brought in like years.
I mean, that is so cool though. And I love that
very
it made
cool.
the paper. I just going off of the photo, and not all the other stuff that you just brought me. Oh, I don't know, man. The photo just looks like a tin hat or something. And that's why I thought of Billy Meyer immediately.
Right.
But there is no way to
It's
know
the
for
plane that
certain.
sells it for me. Like, absolutely, it's the plane that sells it for me.
It's the plane for me. But
Oh, I never showed the photography report.
oh,
I'll summarize it. Basically, he analyzed it using photogrammetry techniques, and the end result of the analysis was this photo is a genuine photo that appears to be in line with the paper of the time, the film stock of the time, or well, not the film stock. They didn't have the film stock, but the camera type, like the lens and the camera type, it all matched to late 80s, late 80s to 1990. And he said it's as far as he can tell, it's a genuine photograph of a thing and it is aged correctly and everything. So,
well, and they didn't have Photoshop then.
Well, they had some version of it somewhere, but not commercially available for two chefs from Scotland. You know.
Well, that's true. Yeah, definitely. I really don't know what to think about it. Let's just say it's a real photo.
Neither do I. I feel like this is why I put enduring mystery, because we are not at the bottom of it yet. We are all investigating it together. Now everybody's got different points of view, and this is why I wanted to take my point of view out of it until like the end, so I could just present the data as well as I could. Because it's not. I don't want to present something and go, this is how this confirms a bias that I have. Because it's not about my bias. It's about what does the data tell me. Amen. The data tells me that there are questions about the provenance of the negatives from the MOD to the Scottish paper. There are questions about the classification of the photograph. Did he break protocol by keeping a copy? Is it a case of it coming out now to... because he's at the point where he won't get prosecuted for it? There's a lot of questions.
He is old now. I've always said, like, when people, I mean, this happens a lot, right? Kind of like these deathbed confessions. Not saying that he's like gonna kick the bucket, but this happens a lot when people get towards a certain age. It's like, okay, I've held on to this information for long enough. Chances are, most of the time, there's no need to hold on to it at all. I mean, I imagine with everything else that's going on in the news and with governments in the world, that they wouldn't prosecute someone for showing a very old, a 30-year-old, almost 32-year-old photo. Actually, yeah, it's 32-year-old photo.
I just want to share something for Ron in the chat. So this is what he, so it was taken on black and white film. And he does a pretty, he's done a pretty good, in fact, I'm going to get a link to this file and put it in the description of this video so everybody can go and read the analysis done by the photography professor at Sheffield University, because
that's awesome.
It's pretty in depth. It's probably more in depth than I could go through on here because I just have to read it. And it's a lot to read, but I'll put the link in the description after we're done, and people can go and find it. I'll also tweet it out in case people don't want to go back to YouTube. I'll tweet it out to you. So
that's very
anyway, Bree, enough of the UFO stuff. What have you got for me?
Hey, I just have a few things. Some of them not new, and some of them kind of new. Just things that are on our mind. Okay. Thank you. And back to
You're welcome.
Bari. Just kidding.
Back to you, Brie.
So earlier this month, the very first of the month, actually, the monthly notices, they are a journal paper of the Royal Astronomical Society, came out about a series of strange bursts that they recorded, and it kind of got them all confused physics-wise because it doesn't fit in the standard model. So they're looking at other galaxies, like we already know. They've been trying to study this for a long time. So just in case everyone doesn't know, which I feel like you guys already do, galaxy clusters when they clusters when they collide, massive amounts of energy is basically catapulted into those protons, and the hot plasma, and it generates radio emissions, right? And they come like
Right.
different shapes and sizes. So we have a radio relic, which is an arc shaped, and it sits towards the outskirts of a galaxy cluster. The radio
Interesting.
halos are like irregular sources that lie towards the cluster center. And fossil radio sources are just basically radiation left over from the death of a supermassive black hole in the center of that galaxy. So when they came across Able 3266 galaxy
That's a
cluster,
pretty image.
it is, and it is roughly about 800 million light years away from us.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is not a neighbor necessarily. And this one in particular is a very strange kind of like a clusterfuck situation going on in this galaxy. And what they detected from it is it does not fit in their standard model whatsoever. So the relic that was finally detected, it was just detected earlier this month, is not a normal arc. It concaves. So now they're giving it the term wrong way relic because it doesn't fit
Right.
into any of our standard physics models. They don't understand how the hell that is happening. And so now everyone's like jumping on board to try to figure out, wait, how could there be multiple things going on at once? But they've never seen this before. And I
That
just
is really
find
interesting.
I do find it interesting because I think that it's good to remind ourselves that just because we have some things figured out in science doesn't mean that we have all the answers, and it doesn't mean that something can't change. You know, we base everything off of our current understanding in physics, but what if tomorrow they find something that just completely knocks all of that out of the park? So I find it exciting when scientists, specifically like astrophysicists, when they have findings that don't fit in our current model, because that just shows that we have to find a new way to rethink things. And, you know, we're always throwing out these ideas out here of what could be going on in space and whatnot and how we relate to each other. And if we don't even have our standard physics figured out, I mean,
Right.
God knows what the real truth of the situation is.
I feel like we are naive to think that we know really what's going on. We know a slice of it. Same as what I was talking about with that UFO thing. Like we everyone has their own slice, but no one has the whole picture.
Right. And
Yeah.
I just love, I think, you know, especially on this podcast, we've talked a few times about how science to a certain point can almost become like a religion in the sense of it being kind of rigid and
That comes from the educational system. So if
oh,
you've got an
definitely.
academic class that have, you know, they've built their entire careers on a certain framework, and then something gets discovered that disrupts all that framework, there's a lot of ego involved there. There's a lot of,
Oh, for
oh no,
sure.
change. I don't want everything to change because now I have to uproot my comfortability in my career. And it's to the detriment of science a lot of the time, because it means that like paradigm shifting science fields like the study of consciousness get pushed to the wayside because
Mm-hmm.
they don't fit into the nuts and bolts framework that a lot of science is rooted in. So
1000%. And that's the only thing that ever bothers me about it is stuck in that box thinking because it has to fit in a certain model. So I get excited when there's little things where they're like, wait, how the hell is that possible? Because
right,
it's your little glass box that you've made everything fit into is not realistic nor factual once we start really like digging into things. So it's a cool mystery. I'm gonna look out for it. I love hearing all the space findings. I just think that so much has been happening. And little things like this, even though it's huge in the scientific world, these are things that we're not really paying attention or listening to.
Right.
And you could be like, oh, who cares? It's just a radio blast, but it's the fact that it doesn't fit in our physics model, our standard model, current day. That is the exciting part to me.
Right. Totally.
And this other story that I came about was not new.
We meet again, Mr. Loeb.
I know you don't really, so this is about an
Okay,
asteroid.
I want to clarify that straight up, because it's not that I don't. It's not that I don't like him. I just feel like he. I don't know. It feels like he kind of wanders out of his lane sometimes, and maybe that's my own thing. It's a me problem, not an RV problem. But
I think what it is
yeah.
that you look out for when people become the center, like the focal attention for something in particular.
I don't like the mythologization of researchers. I feel like when it becomes about the person, it doesn't. It's no longer about the data, and I'm all about the data. So
yes,
but
I think
he does good work. I don't want to sit here and like denigrate his work. He does great work, but.
Absolutely. And I think it's just the fact that he's from Harvard and he was really the only one to put his foot,
right. He
out of that box and be like, hey.
Ahead of his, he definitely stuck his neck out for the subject. And for that, I got to commend him.
So this asteroid in 2014 landed in the Pacific Ocean. And Avi Loeb in February, I think he was actually on the debrief at the time, mentioned that it could very well be some type of alien technology. And then, of course, the Space Command sent out a memo. They just tweeted it, actually, which seems strange. But they were basically confirming that they're like 99.999% sure that it was an object outside of our solar system, which would make it another interstellar object similar to Oumuamua.
Now, I actually do think that Oumuamua was some kind of ancient kind of craft.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it could have been. It might not be ancient, but like the technology is certainly different. It's if it's like this kind of rocky, oblong cigar-shaped type thing that's on a very specific trajectory through the solar system, things that make you go
yeah, isn't that odd? I will never forget when that came out because it was within months of the New York Times dropping about
actually, it was a couple of months. It was a couple of months before. It was about a month and a half before.
I want to say it was October.
It was October, late September, early October. With my other work that I've done, I've put together a pretty good chronology of it, because certain people, I remember it quite clearly because certain people that kind of were grifting on it, and I know where in the timeline that happened. So yeah, it was October of 2018.
I'll just never forget because at the time it felt like, whoa, this is big news. And then the New York Times, and it was like, whoa, okay. These are two ET-ish things dropping at once. Like, now we're making moves. Now the ocean is rocking. The boat is gonna tip. We are going.
I feel like there was a lull after that, though. There was a lull where the government had its reaction, and then things happened, and now we've got to the next phase, whereas the government's talking about it. Other countries are starting to release what they've got, whether officially or unofficially, and we're slowly building a consensus reality for the kind of for normal people that it's real and it's an addressable thing now. It's not just, oh, I believe in little green men. It's not like that anymore. It's
more scientific and
data to study.
Which is what I'm here for. I'm here for the science. Like,
you're here for the science.
I'm not here for the personality. I mean, we have amazing personalities.
I am.
But that's not why I'm here. I just happen to be cool.
I'm just here to be weird.
Press 1 in the chat if you think that I'm cool. Press 2 if you think that I'm not cool.
What's number
Audience
3?
participation.
Audience participation. Yeah, so I think this would be interesting if this was indeed a second interstellar object, and also the fact that it actually landed here in our ocean. God knows, like, there could be other ET races that, like, send these little asteroids to crash into the ocean, but really they sink all the way down to the
Right.
ocean floor where there's some type of gateway and it opens, and then the asteroid cracks open and that's actually a ship or like resources from another planet. That's where my brain goes.
It's pretty
It's a way
wild.
to
Like, it reminds me of the probes. You know, the beginning of Empire Strikes Back when the probe goes down to the Hoth and it crashes and it comes up and it's like beep 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 beep. I feel like for some reason this just reminds me of that. Like, it's a probe sent to it. Maybe I don't know. That's just me
a
spitballing. I don't think
probe,
it's
or they're
yeah.
just like sending supplies. It's just a payload.
This is why he wants to go find out, right?
That's why he wants to find out. But then that got me thinking, like, okay, if we're gonna start digging at the bottom of this Pacific Ocean, why hasn't anyone pushed Avi to get involved in the Baltic Sea anomaly?
Oh, world-class pivot there, Bree.
Yeah.
Nicely done. I actually agree with you there. Why
Right? Why
if
aren't we
they're
doing
so
that?
interested in underwater ruins and relics, why are we not investigating the Baltic Sea anomaly? Maybe it's something that, you know, we can push for RB to look at. Maybe it's something that, like, if there's enough public interest for him,
And there
to
should
have a
be.
look.
I mean,
Right.
everyone
I think
was
this would be right up his
oddly
alley if
baffled by this.
he's, you know. But then it's this is where I have problems with it. Stay in your lane, but this isn't my problem. This is a me. I have to keep reminding myself. This is a me problem.
your
This is
lane.
not an RB problem. This is
It's
my
a
own
Kari
You know,
problem.
it's yeah.
It's her intrusive thoughts.
It is.
It is, but I mean,
It's the
this has
shadow.
data. This
Right.
has data that can be analyzed. I mean, the Galileo project can most likely fund it. I don't understand.
Yeah.
I think, again, if you got the public interested, which I feel like all of us definitely are, you can say that it's not the Millennium Falcon, but I wholeheartedly think that it is. Another Star Wars reference for us today. And
Never tell me the
I
odds,
mean,
kid.
I'm like, let's get in there.
Let's get into it, friends.
That's what really piqued my interest. Is like, okay, Abby, you want to be making all these moves? You want to start getting in the water? Put your scuba suit on. Let's get over there. I'm so intrigued. I'm dying to know what this is. Why do we all know and we haven't investigated? Why?
Right.
Why?
Publicly, anyway.
So that was it. The next thing I wanted to ask you really quick, and I kind of talked about this earlier with you, was if you have watched the Woodstock documentary on Netflix.
I have not yet. I do plan to watch it, though. It's just busy week. But I've heard things about it that are just pretty wild. And I mean, I've been to festivals where, you know, on the third day, it just turns into anarchy and there's people burning their tents down and campfires. And that's I can only imagine what other kind of bad things are happening to people.
Well, for sure. Yeah. And it's a shame that this was supposed to be, you know, Woodstock in the 60s was this peaceful, although let's not pass up the fact that the original Woodstock still had its issues. People were still stranded. There's still missing people from the very first Woodstock.
Yep.
So I mean, it had its issues already, but I mean, people brought their kids there. You have a bunch of hippies. The main part was that people started taking this brown acid that went around that was not good.
Right.
And so that was like some of the things, but it is a totally different experience in the 90s than in the 60s. And I think it's a good reflection of the climate.
And you've got new metal bands like, say, like Limp Bizkit.
Well, that was the thing, is the music was totally different. And I think that definitely relates to music seems to reflect like our emotional climate as a collective sometimes. And the 60s and 70s definitely did it with it, the counterculture movement. And then we kind of took a dive. And then it was the 90s grunge, extremely emo. Everyone must have had lots of Scorpio in their chart.
Right.
Actually, they do. I know it was in their Pluto. But it was much darker. It was getting in touch with the shadow and possibly never even getting out of the shadow.
Right.
And it's interesting
It was a
way,
manifestation of the dark
for
side
sure,
of like a
of people.
collective group consciousness. So like people, like a person can be smart. People are not smart. People in a group are generally not very intelligent as a group, and it's much more base instinct and reaction to things. So like stampedes, it takes one or two people to start running in a crowd, and then all of a sudden everybody's running, and nobody's stopping and going,
Exactly.
this is unsafe. What are we doing? Everyone's just reacting. So,
and that's the big thing that stuck out to me was how quickly it is for us as humans to get grabbed in this hive mind mentality where certain energy seems to just overly take over, and it's like
right.
people go on autopilot and they just follow. It's like that energy just is consumed by everyone, and now they're just like all one force. And
Right.
a lot of stuff happened earlier. Actually, I don't even think it was this year, was it? I don't remember when Astral World happened. And that was
Right.
obviously a catastrophe as well, not nearly comparable. But, there were a lot of talks of people saying that maybe there was something dark going on there. Oh, was it a dark occult ritual? All of
I
these
mean,
things. I
I
don't
wouldn't be
believe that.
surprised if there was something going on. Whether it can be done
Well,
or not, I don't know. But
no, for sure. I mean, I don't see. I'm just throwing it out
although
there
I
that
think
because of
it could have
that,
been the amount of acid that people were taking. I think that may have contributed to the madness, the delirium that seemed to set over a large group of people.
I just don't know how many people were on acid in Woodstock 99. I know there was an ass ton of drugs, so of course people are under the influence of different substances, and
How
you're
many
just
people in
fucking
that photo do you
raging.
think are on drugs?
Every single one of them. I mean,
Probably.
they climbed the fucking tower and brought the whole thing
Right.
down. They crowd surfed on the plywood. It was out of control since day one. Day one was awful, and then it just got worse and worse and
Right.
worse and worse and worse. And so the first thing that popped up in my head was that Astro World concert, and everyone saying, "Oh, it was a dark ritual. Look, you can see the devil. This happened and this happened." And I'm like, I could totally see like some weird occult stuff going on in the background that makes people just like go absolutely crazy and do shit together. I'm not saying that's what happened or anything like that, but it's just, wild.
Yeah, it's pretty
And the
wild
amount
into
of
that.
people, and then, they burned the whole place down. The fire's gotten everyone's like semi trucks. So then
Yep.
because of all the propane tanks and like all that shit just starts blowing up too. And so it was just absolutely mayhem. There was
Hell
4
on earth.
people I know that came forward with rape charges. Rape charges with that they had been raped while they
Right.
were there at the concert. Some of them said that it was right there in the middle of the crowd, which is just nuts if that happened, because like who's
Jesus.
standing there? I don't know. It terrifies me.
That's
And
messed up. Like, how can
yeah, if
anybody
it's there
be
in,
walking
yeah.
past that and
And I just
Jesus?
feel like I'm like nervous now to be going to festivals and stuff. But of course, at the time, they had Corn and Limp
Right.
Bizkit, and
I
they
guess
had
music right at that moment, it was a cultural moment within the metal scene where everything was very, very visceral and very angry. And if you get a bunch of people that are dehydrated, pissed off in a crowd, and you start playing a song like Break Stuff, people are gonna break stuff.
It's one of those days. What's up,
But you
Gorilla
don't want to wake up.
Gamer? Everything is fucked. Everybody sucks. I thought that everyone that played they were all like the best bands for that time. That
Right.
everything was music
The
I grew
lineup was
up.
killer, but
Yeah, I
You
grew up on that music, so I'm like, oh my God, I would absolutely love to be there. I asked my parents, why didn't you guys go? They're like, we didn't even have friends that went. And I'm thinking that's probably a really good idea because who knows if,
Yeah.
what would have happened to y'all or not. But
Y'all.
y'all, I'm just curious. I don't believe they'll ever do another Woodstock. But it seems
Probably not.
like the the point of what Woodstock was supposed to be has never fully turned out that way. There's always been something darker, something sinister that has come forward instead. I saw that they compensated waters for people when they were going in. And then I believe one girl said towards the end, like the last day, she thinks they were charging like $12 for a bottle of water.
Jesus
Um,
Christ.
and
That's
then
so much money. Like,
the water that they did give people like something, I can't remember what happened with the sewage, but it basically like
oh
something
no.
exploded or something, and the water became contaminated, and the water was tested, and there was like feces in the water and things like that, and in the mud where people are just like rolling around and being crazy. And
That's,
so, like,
oh,
yeah,
it's like pure cringe because it's like how
I
do
mean,
you get to that point, right?
no, yeah, and it was definitely a collective effort. The promoters did not do a well enough job. I think that promoters need to realize that at the end of the day, a lot of people are just animals and will do whatever they want to do. And so you have to have extra backup and resources for people. They didn't even have real security guards. They were peace officers. So
Yep.
that's an issue. I get it. We want to be like peace and love and all that. Yes, but you also
You
have to
can't
like do things to keep
diffuse
that.
10,000 people that want to riot. You can't just go in, but guys, remember Gandhi. It doesn't
Yeah,
work.
no.
Like,
No, not at all.
no.
It's pretty bad. I'm sure you've been in a crowd before where something's happened. I know that I've
Yeah.
been like almost suffocated in a crowd and passed out and
I've
was
been in
like
crowds where
crowd
people have
surfed
passed out,
over.
and
Yeah, wake up
the
under the
general
tent and you're
reaction is
like,
either
"Where
like
am
give them
I?"
as much room as you can, or we've had it where like you pick the person up and you crowd surf them over to the front.
Yeah, that
But you
happened
kind
to
of
me when I
pass
had
on
passed out.
as they're doing it, you pass on the message. They're unconscious. They're unconscious.
Yeah.
So like by the
And
time they
if
get to the
people
front,
care.
they shout at the guards, "This person's unconscious," and then they know what to do. It's just
Mhm.
there's, I guess like having spent a lot of time in crowds over my life, like there's just like a general etiquette. Like in a safe, peaceful crowd, there's and it's the breakdown of that etiquette that leads to the chaos.
Yeah.
It's
No,
like look
for
out for the
sure.
people around you, look out for like people being creeps, just look out for people. And when it's when people stop looking out for people and it turns into Lord of the Flies that it just falls apart.
It's funny that you said that because there is someone in this documentary who's out there lighting all the shit on fire. And he's like, "It's like the Lord of the Flies out here."
That's funny,
And I'm like, that is the last place that I want to be.
right?
Just
Yeah,
everything
I'd
about
be.
that was like, oh no,
As
I
soon
would
as that
love to see
started
these
happening, I would
bands.
have just left. I would have just started walking.
Yeah.
I'd get home eventually. Like, ooh,
Yeah.
no thanks.
Joshua 420 is right. Mad Max. It was basically
Right.
turned into like post-apocalyptic situation there, and it's just sad that we can't be trusted to do things. That's the first thing I thought is like, this is why we can't have nice things, because I
Right.
would
It
love to see
is.
them, but
I
I'm
think there
not
should be
putting
a limit
myself
on
in
how
that.
many people you have in a crowd.
Oh, for
So like
sure.
that many people, that's too many. Like if it goes wrong, it goes really, really wrong. You remember Fire Festival? It's another prime
Oh,
example of thing that was bad planning, but it quickly turned into survival of the fittest because everybody had to suddenly look out for their needs, not knowing that they were going to have to do that, and
yeah.
nobody was looking out for each other, and it was the breakdown of that social order in a way.
It's just sad, man. Yeah, and the promoters
Sad,
did
man.
blame it a lot on the artists, which of course they have a certain amount of responsibility there, but at the same time, as a performer, you're like, okay, I have to perform. I have to hype up the crowd. That's my job. Um, I mean, it wouldn't have been hard for them to be like, maybe this isn't safe for some people in the crowd. I should maybe not do this. But they didn't.
It's that crowd psychosis. So once they get going, it's hard to get them to stop until it quite literally burns itself out.
Yeah. So I definitely recommend that everyone go and watch this documentary and just think to yourself, like, what is it about human nature? Was there something more sinister going on in the background? Or is it that human nature is to just collectively plug into each other and let that type of, I can't think of any other word other than energy, just take over you and do things. When you hear people in the documentary, like, people that would never do anything like this in their life all of a sudden just started doing it, or like, well, I didn't even think about it before I knew it, I was doing it too. And it's like, why? It's
It's
just,
the following of the crowd. It's like when you start. It's
it's
how a
just
stampede starts. It's once a behavior breaks the social norm, it becomes more and more common in a crowd because it's changing the status quo.
yeah,
And then
it's just
before
like,
long, everybody's just doing shit that they never would do normally. But because like it's almost like so like Westworld, people do shit that they wouldn't do in the real world because they've been given a place where they have free reign to do whatever they want. It's the same kind of thing. So that creates a scenario where everybody it's just anarchy and rioting, and then it causes more people to go, oh, here's my chance to, and maybe not even consciously, but it's this letting go and letting go of like established order. It's interesting on like a psychological level for like 100,000 people to go through this collective madness. It's a very, very interesting thing, and it leads into for me that leads me into consciousness science.
For sure. That's
how all these people are interacting with each other consciousness wise. Is it like a bit like a virus where like you get a few people that are suffering from anarchic delirium that spread it to other people around them, and then they spread it to other people around them? Before long, you've got 100,000 people having a riot, and you don't even know how you got there.
Isn't that madness? Yeah. So that's exactly it, Kara. You said it well. Consciousness science. That's what gets my brain ticking around, and I'm like, how does this happen? This is so strange. We definitely need to do a deep TOTIWABA on something with the brain. I know we've had that on our minds.
But this is for a while now.
I know. So even though that's a little dark and all that stuff, I do want to end it with a conscious quote of the day. For most of you, most likely all of you that never listened to our podcast, that one time I was abducted by aliens, something.
Yeah, I see you. You didn't listen.
Something that Jamie and I always did was a conscious quote of the day, along with our fact or sci-fi. And it was just kind of a way to end us on a better note if we maybe got into something a little bit too dark, or just to take our minds off it. You just never know when you need to hear some words. So this conscious quote of the day is by Eckhart Tolle, who I love. And he says, when you complain, you make yourself a victim. Leave the situation, change the situation, or accept it. All else is madness. And straight up from the flow up, I think some of us really need to remember that. Maybe instead of jumping on Twitter all the time and calling people dumb, or getting super attached and angry about a UFO photograph, people like, this is real, no it's not, it's a fake, no it's not. Our emotions are getting a little tied up, a little bit too tight in there. So it's like, don't give in to that, you guys. You either accept the situation or just walk out of it, because you're continuing madness at this point to stay in these arguments with people over whether or not you think a UFO picture is real or not. It's kind of silly.
It is silly. This is what I was trying to get at the beginning, is that whole thing is it's a waste of time. Like, it's great that everyone can have the discourse, but when everyone starts digging in ideologically without applying all of the facts, they just pick the facts that suit what they want to do. It just falls apart. Like, there's people out there that think it's real, so they'll only do the official, the official stuff that we went through tonight and nothing else, or they'll think it's completely fake and only focus on, oh, it's a reflection, or it's this and this and this, without looking at the other side. That's why I tried to have a spread of the information where it's like, here's a bit of each thing, as much like data for each thing as I can fit onto slides, and then go over it all so you get a full pie instead of a slice of pie.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great note. And hey, I know that this is harder than it is. So I think that, we'll just have to do our best to remind ourselves of these things. Kari knows a couple weeks ago, I had a lot of problems with the situation because I just wanted to get involved and like straighten things out from, people that were saying things about us that were literally completely untrue, not opinions. And I just wanted to engage so much. And thankfully, Kari and Jamie were really grounding me in the fact that, it's like, what, we don't have anything to prove to anyone else. And by me just responding or engaging in it is only continuing that madness to happen.
Well, it's a
Where I
call and
could
response.
where I could just
the
step
next
away
part of the
and just
cycle is incumbent upon your response to it. So if you cut that
right.
off and you act like it
You end
didn't
it.
happen, you do end it, because the person just burns themselves out, and then people with the brain will look at the situation and go, well, that person just said a load of stuff that isn't true. These people are being really genuine, and they said what was actually true.
Yeah. So
I mean, at the end of the day,
it's
it's focusing on opinions and digging in ideologically to what people want to believe about other content creators or situations, and I don't care for that. I'm not here for the personality. I'm here for the data. If people think that that's bad, if they want to go and do a 2-hour show where they go over Twitter, good for them, man. I'm not going to be watching, so I don't care.
Well, yeah, it's just hard, and it's a hard thing to constantly remind yourself. One thing I try to remind myself is, like, when I feel like I need to defend myself or get the story straight, that's literally just my ego. That is just my ego trying to protect myself. It's
right.
They said something wrong, it's like you have that need to straighten people
you felt
out.
personally attacked because you were personally attacked.
Ego.
Like,
that's
it is
my
ego, but there's healthy ego. You were personally
there's
attacked,
a difference,
and you had the response of, I want to defend myself, and we went, don't do that. As much as you want to, and you're justified to defend yourself, we said, no, don't do that, because it's going to perpetuate this call and response abuse cycle that just wraps you into a contextual thing where the story of your channel is now your beef with this other channel, and that's not what we do here. We go over data and we talk about it. We don't do the drama.
For sure.
And
sure.
If you think that that's cool, make sure to subscribe.
That's an excellent point. We got a lot of feelings up in ufology, unfortunately. So let's.
You do. Everybody's got fifis, right?
A little too much. So yeah, it's.
Didn't you have some kind of weather related thing?
You know what? Do you have any weather news? There are some things going on.
I don't know. Why There's no weather this week, everybody. Back to you, Bree.
No, it is hot as balls.
There might be weather next week, though.
Kari always has weather reports for us, so that is definitely coming
I do
soon.
normally have them, but
Yeah.
I don't today because there's really nothing much going on this week in terms of weather. There was I guess there's it's monsoonal season out in the desert, so there's been
sucks.
Been
I saw the
storms and there's been a lot of flooding.
It's worse and
other than
worse
that,
every time.
It's a quiet week. Coming up, though, is the meteorological peak of hurricane season. That's like August 21st. Generally, after that, because season's always back-ended, the last half of the season have the majority of the storms. So if you live in the Gulf Coast, now is the time to start preparing. Be hurricane ready. Stay safe. Aside from work on this channel and other work I do on other channels, I actually work in the weather industry. So I just want to keep you all safe at the end of the day. Where it doesn't matter what you believe, what beefs you have, everybody's affected by weather. So
Amen.
heed the warnings out there, humans. I don't want to see people get hurt at the end of the day.
Humans. Yeah,
All the
I gotta
humans.
tell you, I'm happy not to live in Florida anymore. I'm not trying to.
Right.
I'm not trying to do that. I stay in California where the weather is just absolutely perfect, unless it is warm like it is now, because I hate warm weather. But you know, we can never be totally satisfied. Thank you, everyone, for listening and coming today to our little news broadcast. We're definitely going to keep this running. There's many other people in our TOTIWABA group that usually have news and things they want to discuss,
Yep.
but it doesn't always fit into all of our shows. And so sometimes it, gets forgotten about, and it's just something that we share within us. And it's like, why don't we just share it to the world?
Who? Who?
Yeah. Yes, who? And please keep Jamie in your thoughts and prayers. Let's hope that she kicks this little bug, whatever she has. You can always send her some money to make her feel better. Maybe she can buy some crystals, something that's good for her stomach.
That would be pretty wild.
Yeah, I don't know. But
I'd love
like
some
I
money.
said, thank you, everybody, and you have a fabulous day.
Thank you.